Welcome to another edition of Motherland. Do well to like and subscribe to help us grow more content. Today we'll be looking at the horrific history of sex farms during slavery. Enslaved blacks were sexually exploited and abused by their white masters. Time and time again, the horrifying experience of enslaved Africans working on plantation in the Americas and other parts of the world are told over and over again. During the slave trade, which lasted for well over 400 years, Africans were captured and chained down, forced onto ships and taken into new lands against their will. Through their harrowing experience on the ship, many of the enslaved Africans died even before reaching their new homes. For the many who survived, it was the beginning of sleepless nights, several hours of work on plantations on empty stomach, and the constant reminder that in their new lives they were nothing but a commodity to their owners. To inform people about the black experience during slavery years, much research has been done to help bring to light the accounts, revelation on how men and women were used as sex toys, forced to breastfeed white babies, as well as experience of slaves both on the ships and in the field, just to mention a few, have all been brought to light. However, it seems that much emphasis is either on the general enslavement or the experience of women during slavery. Much focus has been drifted away from the experience of the enslaved, who, aside the harsh working hours, had horrifying experience of their own. Shockingly, the raping of enslaved men was as prevalent as the raping of enslaved women. However, the issue of enslaved men as rape victims has been mainly undiscovered due to the fact that men were generally shy to voice out that they have been raped by merchants or their owners. Aside from being shy, the issue of enslaved men being raped was not believable because many of the men that raped them were married or had several girlfriends. There was also no physical evidence to show that they were actually being raped, as they did not get pregnant or show physical hurt. The raping of enslaved men was very common in the southern United States and Cuba, where it was a huge part of the slave system by the Spanish. Many enslaved men were raped on ship and at secret sex farm and seasoned plantation for homosexual slave owners, which were very popular in the Caribbean. They were also killed if they rebelled. The rape of enslaved men was an open secret for several years during the slave trade days. Enslaved men were also forced to have sex with their master's wife when masters were away. Many of these white mistresses used their African male slave who exhibit great physique and strength. In general, the rape of enslaved men was overlooked because the issue of rape became very gender biased. Enslaved women were subjected to many sexual improprieties. Among them were violations from their masters and their son, forced mating, and arranged marriages. Historian E. Franklin Fraser said, "Stock men were weighed and tested before being put in a room with young women to mate for the purpose of bearing children." By the end of the 18th century, the breeding of slaves was a common practice. Laws were changed so the public could view slaves as things instead of people, so the owners could do with them as he wished. Slave owners even began believing that slaves were grounded in the Bible. American slaves in 1860 were worth $4 billion, which was far more than the $228 million worth of gold and silver circulating back then. Even the value of southern farmland is worth $1.92 billion did not amount to the worth of slaves. So for the owners, their slaves were worth everything to them. The mortality rate among slaves was very high, so their owners would often encourage or force them to have children even at the age of 13. Females were expected to begin having children or replenish their stocks. They were expected to have 4 or 5 children by the age of 20. They were often encouraged by their owners to do this with the promise of freedom. Enslaved females who did not cooperate with their owners to bear children for them would be subjected to many and various punishments, both physical and mental. In some instances, the female who bore children for their owners were given gifts, including extra clothing, the withdrawal of any harsh treatment, and sometimes, if their quota was met, freedom. Women who did not or could not bear children would not be given any breaks or reward that were given to mothers, and they would do the same work on the level of men. If a woman was deemed infertile, she would sometimes be separated from her family, and owners would sometimes split up marriage couples and require them to choose new partners. Male slaves at the age of 15 were inspected to see if they could breed well. If it was deemed that they could not, their testicles would be castrated over the course of 5 years. Each male was expected to get at least 12 female slaves pregnant. According to the slave narratives, a male slave named Bot was said to have fathered over 200 children. To provide entertainment for his friend, the plantation owners would sometimes arrange orgies among the male and female slaves. His friend would be allowed to join in them. Many white supremacists, wealthy merchants, astronauts often use enslaved men as a form of sexual entertainment. Enslaved men were often made to line up naked for their sexual organs to be scrutinized, laughed at, and discussed. They were also made to dance naked in extreme cases. An enslaved man was made to forcefully have sex with an enslaved virgin to entertain the white viewers. Plantation owners often take the pretty female slave, put them to work in their household. If the owners showed affection or gave favors to the pretty girl, his wife would subject her to torture. If the pretty slave bore a child, the owner's wife would behead the child. A slave wife could never be faithful to her husband, as most owners demanded she have affairs with other men, nor was she allowed to remain pure or virtuous. Some men slaves were purchased by their owners solely by the size of their penis, and the black men were often raped by their gay owners. This process was called breaking the buck. Not all owners abandoned the children they fathered with female slaves. Some would provide them with education and money, and some owners even set free their mistresses and mixed-race children. Well, this is where we stop in today's edition of Motherland. Do well to help us grow and build more content by liking and subscribing to this channel. You can also ring the notification bell in order for you to be updated whenever we drop new content. Stay blessed until we meet again.